Welcome everybody to Midweek Meetings Episode 3. I'm the one with the camera, KnockdownNico, alongside co-host Pr3ssix.
Sir, let's get it.
Hey, week 2 of the NFL season has concluded, and I mean, a lot has happened. We'll get into it, but let me just say a lot has happened. We'll recap some of the games, then we'll go into some headlines. We got a ton of headlines to go through. A lot of them are injury related, but we got a couple other big headlines as well. Then we'll go into our predictions for the games this week, into our auto lock pick of the week, followed by fantasy football, and then our quote unquote fun question to end off the show. We're going to start though with recapping the games. The first one I want to go over is Thursday night football game. Bills versus the Dolphins. Yes, Tua did get hurt. We'll get into that more when we get to the headlines, but the Bills just dominated this game. James Cook had 3 touchdowns, and it just the Bills just dominated. There's really no other way to put it.
Yeah, I liked what I saw from the Bills. They looked like they were able to contain Tyreek Hill, which I think was a big part of their success in that game. He was pretty silent. I had him in fantasy. It was tough, but yeah, the Bills definitely they just owned the Dolphins, and they definitely moved up in my power rankings. I think uh they played a really good game, and I think they can compete with any team in the NFL.
I think this was a good test as well, in a sense that, we've seen Josh Allen in the past feel like he's had to, do everything. This game, obviously, the defense showed up, but this game, he didn't do anything super spectacular. Like James Cook had 3 touchdowns, but he kind of just played back in a sense, and just let the players around him do the work. So it didn't seem like the Josh Allen we know, but the Josh Allen we also see in the past is, everything's on his back. So I feel like the Bills they're probably the top runners for the AFC East right now. I don't see it in that. Like I said, we'll get into Tua. Tua being hurt definitely hurts the Dolphins, and we'll see how that affects Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and that squad. But I also want to bring up with Tyreek Hill, I think I saw somewhere, I don't remember the exact stats, but I think he's been under 80 or 85 yards every time he has faced the Bills when he's been a Dolphin. So whatever they do, I think it's the 2 high safeties. It seems to work every time, and obviously the Bills have won, I think, 11 of the last 13 matchups or something now. Moving on, we're just going to glaze over these a few, but there were a lot of upsets this week. There's another way to put it. Obviously, some of them, you can say they were upsets or whatnot, but the Bucks over the Lions, not a lot of people saw that happening. We had the Vikings over the 49ers, which I was very surprised of. My parlay kind of got sold by the Niners not scoring enough. That's another story. And then the Raiders over the Ravens. I don't think anyone, maybe outside of Las Vegas Raiders fans, saw that happening.
Yeah, I think my biggest surprise for this week is definitely the Raiders over the Ravens. I mean, they just sold that game completely. I mean, they were up going into the fourth. They had total control and leverage in that situation, and they sold the bag. The Bucks, you know, I almost called this one because I figured this is a revenge game for Baker. They're gonna come out swinging. I had a good feeling about the Bucks in that game. That one wasn't too much of a surprise to me. The Vikings one, uh, 49ers haven't won in Minnesota in a long time. I forget what the stat was, but I think it's since the 90s they haven't won playing in Minnesota. So that's kind of crazy. Maybe something in Minnesota just kills the 49ers. I don't know what it is.
Maybe.
And also another one to mention is the Falcons over the Eagles last night.
That's true.
That
They just
was
completely
a
choked
big
that.
surprise. Kirk Cousins showed up like he was playing a 1 p.m. game 3 years ago. I mean, it was prime Kirk Cousins right there. That was crazy.
I don't know if you can put that on Kirk Cousins more or not, just the Eagles just choking. I mean,
Oh yeah.
I think if Saquon catches that, that's a touchdown. So that obviously is a different outcome. But their defense on that final drive was just really bad. I mean, two chunk plays in a row to Darnell Mooney, and then that pretty much just got them in a position where they could just, you know, run some plays, but they weren't too pressured on the time. And then obviously there was like what I think 30 something seconds left on the clock when they scored anyway. So I mean, the Eagles choked that straight up. The Eagles choked that. I see that more of as a choke from them than the Falcons kind of winning. But yeah, the Bucks game, the Lions just didn't. Their offense, like, just didn't do good. I thought there were going to be more, big chunk plays from the Lions because the Bucks defense, seems to give up. They're good. They've been good at the run, the past like few years and everything, but they've always had those big chunk plays they've given up. We didn't see a lot out of that from the Lions, and obviously wasn't expecting the Vikings over the 49ers, but we'll have to see. It seems like when the Niners get behind though, Brock Purdy, I'd have to look at the stat, but Brock Purdy doesn't seem like he's able to get the Niners to come back. So we'll have to see how that goes, especially, with Debo potentially being out for a few weeks. We'll get into that with the Christian McCaffrey injury later as well. But yeah.
One thing to mention, I think Jared Goff looked kind of shaky in that game. He looked pretty inaccurate on some of those passes. Um, I don't know. His passing was not like what it was last year. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but something is not clicking in the Lions offense right now. And they're a team to watch to see how they pan out here in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, he had two INTs. I think one was on the. I don't remember if it was the first drive or the first play. I want to say it was the first drive of the game, but for the Lions. But yeah, that kind of set the tone in a sense. They just didn't look as good as what we were expecting, I think. Moving on,
Yeah.
though, the Saints absolutely destroyed the Cowboys, which I don't think people were expecting. But this also brings up another question. Are the Saints legit or not?
You know, I really don't want them to be legit. I'm not gonna lie. But that game was dominant. The Cowboys didn't stand a chance in that game. I wonder how much of it is necessarily the Saints, though. It seemed like it was all Alvin Kamara for most of it. I know Derek Carr had a few chunk plays to Rashid Shaheed. Chris Olave had a nice catch and run down the sideline as well. But I think the Saints, from what I'm seeing in this division, I think they're my division favorites right now with the Bucks finishing second. I think they could make a playoff run, but I do not see them as a Super Bowl contender. I see them maybe making at max the NFC Championship. Um, I don't think they're that legit. I think they haven't proven themselves yet. It's only been 2 weeks. See what they can do. The Panthers game doesn't really count, in my opinion, towards their total production. The Cowboys, though, that was impressive. I'll give them that. But let's see what they do.
Yeah, I was going to bring up that Panthers game. Obviously they destroyed the Panthers. So you were it was like inflated stats maybe, but then you see what they did against the Cowboys. I think they put up 44 points.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it brings up the question, like I said, are they legit? And, it wasn't just the offense, scoring like a whole bunch of points. Obviously they did, but the defense played pretty solid as well. So if obviously Derek Carr right now is looking like an MVP candidate. Let's see if he can keep that up. And we'll have to see how the defense for the Saints plays as well. I'm not sure what their schedule's looking like off the top of my head, but I don't think their schedule is super tough or super, weak at the same time. Actually, let me pull it up right here. I want to say, so, okay, so they play the Eagles this week. That's right. We'll get into that with our predictions, but I think I know who's going to win that game, I think. Then they play the Falcons, the Chiefs, the Bucks. Then they kind of have a little stint where they're definitely probably going to win these games against the Broncos, the Chargers, and the Panthers. And then they play the Falcons again. They play a good defense in the Browns, but we saw the Cowboys were supposed to have a pretty decent defense or a good defense, and it got ripped apart by them. So I think it's just a matter of, can Derek Carr keep this up? Maybe not score 40 points a game, but can he keep this up for the entire season? Because if he can, this team is going to be very scary. And even if the defense doesn't play as superior, as long as they play mediocre in pretty much the majority of their games, the Saints are going to be a scary team. And if Derek Carr can keep it up, I think the Saints team has the potential to be the number one or a top 5 offense this year.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, the NFC South isn't that strong of a division like they said. So they have the Panthers at least one more time. Then they got the Falcons twice, and then the Bucks twice. I think those are all winnable games for them. And I think if they take advantage of those division games, they're definitely a top 3 seed in my opinion in the NFC.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. At maximum, I think at a minimum, I think they split Saint or playing against the Bucks and the Falcons, but they should 100% win against the Panthers without a doubt. Moving on to our last recap, Bengals Chiefs. I mostly put this on here for, was that last play pass interference or was it not? Obviously, it led to the game-winning kick by Harrison Buckner. Kind of helped my fantasy team. We'll get to that a little later, but was that PI? Was that not PI? What do you think?
Look, I'm calling that PI, man. I know Chiefs pay the refs, whatever. You can make your own storyline for that. I think if you look at it, I feel like the Bengals receiver or receiver, not receiver. The DB was just there way too early. I mean, he clearly hit Rice. I feel like that's a PI. And I think the Bengals really sold this game. Um, I think I think the Joe Burrow fumble was the killer. And then the Chiefs scooped it up and scored a touchdown off of that. That I think was the change in this game. And that should have been the Bengals game 100%, but I wouldn't put that on the PI penalty. I think that was PI.
I think it was PI as well. I think he got there early, and yeah, I mean, people are gonna say, like you said, the Chiefs paid the refs, but I think in that case, I think he was definitely early on that. Obviously, that led to the game-winning kick for the Chiefs, and the Chiefs won. But I mean, this wasn't a good game from Patrick Mahomes. I think the stat was this was his second lowest passing yards in his career for a game. So, Patrick Mahomes didn't play good. So, you know, the question I guess you could argue would be, how dominant of a win would this have been if Patrick Mahomes played good, or if the Bengals essentially didn't shoot themselves in the foot with turnovers and stuff. But I almost ended up picking the Bengals this week or last week to win that, but the Bengals hadn't won a game against the Chiefs in like a couple of years, and I don't think they've won at Arrowhead in longer than that. So, that was a good game though overall. It's just, obviously the PI penalty is going to overshadow it, and a couple other calls and no calls as well. All right, moving on to the headlines. A lot of these, are going to be injury based until we get to the last one, which broke, I think it was yesterday. But first, we're going to start off with the Tua Tagovailoa injury, the concussion. it was reported today, actually a couple of hours ago, that he is going to be placed on IR. So he'll be out for at least the next 4 games. They also signed Tyler Huntley to the practice squad, but they have Skylar Thompson starting this week at Seattle. That's going to be a big task. He was kind of thrown in there last game, but he didn't look good. So this is a huge loss for the Dolphins.
Look, we've seen Skylar Thompson a few times in his career. I mean, he's just your typical backup. I don't expect much out of this Dolphins team while Tua's on IR. They can pick up one or two. They can stay in the playoff hunt. I feel like it's gonna be a rough season for them though. That Tua injury was scary, especially coming off last season where he had multiple concussions. Um, I think the Dolphins are smart to take their time with Tua. I don't think they want to rush this injury at all. Give him the time he needs. Um, yeah, but I think if the Dolphins want to be successful, they gotta rely on their run game, which it did look decent against the Bills. Um, really, the air was what they couldn't get going to complement the run game. But I think the Bills were kind of a tough matchup for them there. I think the Dolphins will be able to snag a few games. Hopefully, looking at a wild card spot for the Dolphins here. They can snag a few under Skylar Thompson.
Yeah, going back to the injury part, I think it was 2022 where he had the 3 concussions that season, and then this one. I mean, me personally, especially with the way you looked at it, he had I forget what they call it. I think it's the fencing position, how his hands were, whatever. I personally think he should retire. I mean, he's had essentially 3 major concussions in the past 2 years. Right? Obviously, concussions aren't good in general, but 3 major ones, and then I guess that whatever medical position his hands were in definitely isn't good as well. So I mean, I think he should personally retire, but the next 4 games for them are they play the Seahawks this week, then they play the Titans, which I think is a winnable game. They play the Patriots, and they play the Colts. I feel like they can win at least 2 of these games, but they're gonna, like you said, they need to rely heavy on the run game. Devon Achane, I think Raheem Mostert is still out or he's day to day or week to week, one of those. But they're gonna need to rely heavy on Devon Achane more than they did already, and it's just gonna be tough for them. I think if you look at it from a fantasy standpoint, Achane's value goes up, Tyreek Hill's value goes down as well. But this is going to be a rough 4 weeks for them. Luckily, they're not playing, the greatest opponents. So if Tua comes back, or when he does come back and he's healthy, it may take him a game or 2 to get back into the swing of things. But he's going to be there for the bulk of that schedule where it gets tough and they play tough opponents. So yeah, I think if you're a Dolphins fan, like you said, the best thing you're looking for is a wild card spot, because this injury just puts them out of contention to win the division unless Buffalo and the Jets have some sort of catastrophic derailment this season. Moving on to our next headline, we have a couple of injuries, both on the Niners. We have Christian McCaffrey placed on IR. I feel like that, should have already been. And then Debo is going to miss a few weeks with a calf injury. From what I've read, I don't think they put him on IR yet. They've just said he's going to miss a couple of weeks. So 2 weeks, 1 week. Not really sure, how much that entails, how long he'll be out for. But that's 2 huge blows, because the Niners always seem to do worse offensively when Debo is not in the game. It's just there's not as they don't score as much, they don't have much offense. It's just Debo, even though he's not the center of the focus, I'd probably say that CMC. Debo's that key, and when he's out, the Niners offense isn't as good.
Yeah. The McCaffrey injury is really confusing to me. If he's getting placed on the IR after week 1, I feel like he should have started there. I mean,
Yeah, I agree.
it's really confusing. Like, why did they not start him on IR? But anyways, yeah, this offense is gonna have its work cut out for them in the next few weeks without Debo and McCaffrey. Shanahan is gonna have a completely different look at how he runs these games, in my opinion. He can't be as crafty without McCaffrey and Debo back there. We saw Jordan Mason. He's looked good, but not Christian McCaffrey good. Um, it's gonna be rough. I think Ayuk's gonna have to step up. He's been silent these first 2 weeks, basically. And they're gonna have to find another receiver along with Kittle. Those guys all got to step up in order for the Niners to stay afloat here.
I think Jordan Mason has looked good for, or exceeded expectations for a backup running back, quote unquote. But yeah, I mean, Jawan Jennings is going to have to step up. And then, we'll see when Ricky Pearsall comes back as well. I think he's got another 2 weeks on IR before he even gets off that. So it's just a matter of they're going to have to see who wants to step up. And outside of Ayuk and Kittle, obviously Jordan Mason's been doing really good, but let's see as well how this, affects Brock Purdy, because it doesn't seem like he can come back from games where they're down, especially in like the fourth quarter or even the third quarter. So if they get down in the beginning of a game and they have to play catch up, like it may not look good for them, especially depending on how long Debo is out for and if, he ends up landing on the IR. Next headline is Isaiah Pacheco is out with a fibula injury suffered against the Bengals this week. I think he's having surgery on it this week, if I'm not mistaken, but he's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks. They have Carson Steele, they have Samaje Perine, and then they were looking. Kareem Hunt was visiting. I'm not sure if they signed him to a deal
They
yet or
did
not.
sign Kareem Hunt,
They
I
did.
believe.
Okay, so they
I
have
believe I
Carson
saw that.
Steele, Kareem Hunt now, and then Samaje Perine. He was mostly the third down back, but I mean, this is pretty much their run game, and then they should be getting Clyde Edwards-Helaire back. This ESPN article says the earliest he could return is week 5, so they're still gonna have a couple weeks where it's just Kareem Hunt, Carson Steele, and Samaje Perine.
Yeah, I just looked at it. Kareem Hunt is officially on their practice squad as of right now. So we'll probably definitely see him in this upcoming week. It's kind of a weird homecoming for Hunt, having started his career off in Kansas City until all his allegations or whatnot. So it'll be interesting to see what goes on there between the split between Kareem Hunt and Carson Steele. And it also raises questions for me for this offense because their run game without Pacheco is not going to be great. And Mahomes, like you said, he had a pretty mid performance last week. Kelsey hasn't done anything yet this season. So we're looking at Rashee Rice maybe as their main guy that's got to continue carrying the load in this offense. I think the Chiefs got to keep winning. The Chargers have looked good. They're kind of threatening for that title in the AFC West there, although I think the Chiefs will have no problem taking them down. But they're there, and you got to be wary of that if you're a Chiefs fan. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this injury affects the Chiefs going forward.
Yeah, I mean, Kelsey had 1 reception for 1 yard last game, and he has 4 receptions for 39 yards on the season. I'm really curious to see if they try to do some plays with, Xavier Worthy in the background or in the backfield, maybe some sort of like screen plays or some sort of like sweep running plays as well. But yeah, I mean, this is a huge loss for the Chiefs. Obviously, I feel like, a good part of Mahomes' game is, you have that run game and then, you can do play action with him. And then, if he needs to improvise, he can improvise. But it just kills the play action for the Chiefs. So it'll be interesting to see, how Carson Steele does, and how that split carries, because I think they're going to split carry between Kareem Hunt and Carson Steele when that does happen, or when Kareem Hunt does get called up from the practice squad. So it's going to be a tough 6 to 8 weeks unless, Carson Steele becomes like Jordan Mason and just surprises everyone, which I'm going to lean towards that's probably not going to happen, but, he'll probably be decent for, a backup running back. But it definitely takes a little bit out of the Chiefs' offense. So, like I said, maybe they'll dial some stuff up for Xavier Worthy.
Yeah, I'm not buying in on Kareem Hunt or Carson Steele stock in fantasy at all. I do not trust that backfield at all. Like you said with Xavier Worthy, I would like to see some jet sweeps or something, kind of like what the Packers are doing right now with Jaden Reed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you watch any of the games, but the Packers have been running a lot of jet sweeps with Jaden Reed. He's versatile, and when he gets on the outside, um, he can break one for a touchdown easily. And I think Xavier Worthy has even more potential than Jaden Reed to kind of break those jet sweeps for big plays.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like the Chiefs may as well, have whoever it may be running back on one side, Mahomes, and then put Xavier Worthy on the other side, and then they do like some cross screen type play as well. I feel like, Andy Reid may go deep into his play calling book for, some, I wouldn't say crazy, but, not crazy, screen path or screens or plays to get Xavier Worthy involved, even if it's like, a pass behind the line of scrimmage or some sort of handoff as well. All right, up next, well, our last injury we're going to highlight for the headlines is Cooper Kupp placed on IR. I mean, this is a big blow for the Rams, who are already without Puka Nacua, and now they're going to be without Cooper Kupp for at least 4 weeks. They have Demarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson, Choo Atwell, and this rookie Jordan Whittington. I'm not sure what college he came from, but their wide receiver core is looking very shaky, and we'll have to see who, Stafford decides to throw to. Obviously, they have Colby Parkinson, who is solid. He was more of a tight end 2 or 3 at Seattle, but he can catch the ball as well. So it's just a huge hit for the wide receiver core for the Chiefs, or I'm sorry, not the Chiefs, the Rams.
Yeah, man. Rams are in a tough spot. They probably have one of the hardest divisions in the NFL. Uh, if they make the playoffs, in my opinion, without having Cooper Cup or Puka for these next 3 to 4 weeks, it's gonna be impressive if they make the playoffs. I think this receiving core, those are their main 2 guys who are just gone. And Kyron is only averaging, I think, around 2 yards per carry this season, which is also not good. So Kyron needs to step up. Stafford's gotta find a way to get it to his receivers, make some plays. But yeah, this is tough sledding ahead for the Rams with these injuries.
Yeah, it's going to be really rough, and they got blown out by Arizona, which was a little surprising, I'm going to say. But, I mean, yeah, Stafford didn't look good that game either. And, I'm not saying Demarcus Robinson's a bad wide receiver, but when he's your wide receiver 1, you have, Tyler Johnson as your wide receiver 2, it's not going to be looking too good. Maybe they pick someone up in free agency. We'll have to see. But, yeah, it's just not looking good for the Rams offense overall, and we'll see how much, they can actually do with that offense, especially, if the defense can't keep pace in some games, like clearly they couldn't keep pace last week. All right, moving on to probably the biggest headline of the week. This came out yesterday, but Bryce Young is now benched for Andy Dalton. I want to go over something quick that I saw. Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold threw 22 touchdowns and 19 interceptions combined in Carolina. since they have moved on from Carolina, they have a combined 46 touchdowns and 14 interceptions since leaving Carolina. Obviously, most of that was Baker last year because Sam Darnold was a backup, but Sam Darnold's starting this year. So I guess the question as well, besides your thoughts on Andy Dalton starting and Bryce Young getting benches, is it really Young's fault or is it just Carolina as a whole?
Yeah, I think Bryce Young getting benched is gonna determine Bryce Young's career in the NFL here. I think if Andy Dalton somehow gets it done with this Carolina team and Bryce Young's on the bench, it's not good looks for Bryce. But I do not think that'll happen. I think this Carolina offense is just not good. Every single one of their receivers cannot get separation. If you look at the film, I mean, they're clamped every time. Bryce Young has no one to throw to. It doesn't help that their run game is also terrible. They drafted Jonathan Brooks or whatever, but he's been out. I mean, they've looked miserable. Their defense is miserable. I mean, this team should be a peewee team at this point, man. I mean, gosh, I think I think it's the Carolina effect for Bryce Young. I hope he gets out of there, gets a new opportunity somewhere else. Um, but yeah, we'll see how things shake out with Andy Dalton at the helm for the I don't know how long, but assuming for a while here.
Yeah, I don't think it was said how long, but maybe he gets traded to Miami. That'd be a good start. I'm still I'm a Bryce, like I like Bryce Young. I'm a Bryce Young fan. I think he's still got the potential, but I feel like this benching honestly may be good for him in a sense because you look at him during the game or even press conference, post conference, whatever it may be. You look at his like one at the beginning of the season, and you look at him now, and it's just like whatever it is, passion, confidence, happiness, maybe it's all three. It's just there's just nothing left in it. There's just nothing left in him of it, and it's just been like sucked out of him. Like you said, the offense isn't that good. They got some offensive line and free agency, but I mean, this seems like by the time he gets the ball in his hands at the snap, there's someone in the backfield, even without a blitz. So I mean, I hope he does good. I'm a Bryce Young believer, so we'll see how Andy Dalton does against the Raiders. Obviously, they have Max Crosby, the Raiders, so like I think this game though is gonna determine whether or not it's the Panthers' fault in a sense, or if it's just Bryce Young essentially not being good or good enough for the NFL. But if Andy Dalton does good this game, I honestly hope Bryce Young, like Justin Fields, got out of Chicago. I hope Bryce Young gets out of Carolina. Even if he sits behind a quarterback for 2 or 3 years and then maybe starts a game or even pulls kind of sort of something like Zach Wilson, like just get him out of Carolina. That's all I want.
Maybe you can pull Malik Willis. I mean, Malik
That's
Willis did
true.
nothing in Tennessee, and then he came out and won his first game as a Green Bay Packer. I mean, that was pretty impressive. Although he didn't do much. I mean, we ran the ball for like 200 plus yards, but that's besides the point. But I mean, he filled his role. He got the job done. So I'm hoping Bryce Young gets another opportunity somewhere else because Carolina was not the right fit for him. I think even since the beginning. Um, I mean, the Bears basically snubbed the Panthers. I mean, the Panthers basically got Andy Dalton for a bunch of first round picks and DJ Moore. So yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think it helps either when you're first off. I think his name's David Tepper. It's got to be the worst owner in the history of
oh yeah, he's
owners.
terrible.
Just absolutely terrible. But I mean, the comparison's always Bryce Young to C.J. Stroud. I think C.J. Stroud does a little better, but I don't think he's doing that much better than Bryce Young in Carolina. And I don't think it helps either when you have the coach or the people in the front office or like not super high up saying we don't we don't want Bryce Young. Like we would rather have CJ Stroud over Bryce Young before the draft, and the owner saying no, like draft Bryce Young, and they you know traded away an arm and a leg for him. I mean, it's just a bad situation for Panthers fans. It's a bad situation for Bryce Young. And yeah, I like the quarterbacks now. Like you look at Mahomes, he sat behind Alex Smith for a year, and I'm not like he turned out good. Right, obviously he's way better than good, but he turned out good. So I think Bryce Young is just that like a quarterback that maybe needed to sit behind someone for a year or maybe 2 years, and it doesn't help when you essentially get thrown to the wolves by one being on the worst team and then like two being a rookie and just having the expectations of that number one overall pick as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Those are all the headlines for today, or this week I should say. We're going to move on to our predictions for this week. Now, as I pull this up, I want to say I went 8-8 today or last week. Let me pull that up real quick. Yeah, I went 8-8 last week. I'm 18-14 overall. I'm not sure what you are.
I also went 8-8 last week, and I'm 15-17 overall.
Okay, so hey, we had the same record last week. Pretty close overall in picks. I feel like last week, the picks were a little too easy, and then it kind of bit us in the back. So we'll see how this week's go. Right, up first.
I got some spicy ones this week. I'm not gonna
Ooh,
lie.
I'm
I
ready
think
to
it's gonna be
hear.
interesting.
First up, Thursday Night Football, we have the Patriots at the Jets.
Oh, buddy, I'm taking the Jets. New England hasn't proved anything. Let's be real. Um, they haven't looked impressive. Their offense, their pass game isn't impressive. I think the Jets defense is way better than the Patriots offense. Uh, and we kind of saw it towards the end of that Jets game yesterday, or no, I guess it was Sunday. Um, Aaron Rodgers and that offense started clicking a little bit. They got some stuff going towards the end of that game, and I think that's gonna carry the momentum into Thursday, and it's gonna be a win for the Jets.
I'm not gonna lie, I was on the fence about this pick. That Patriots run game has been really good. Obviously, the Jets gave up a lot of rushing yards against San Francisco. I forget how much they gave up against Tennessee. I think it was around 80 or 100 maybe. I know Tony Pollard, I think, had like 66. Dude, this was tough, but I feel like this game is going to be a gritty game, like a 10-16 type of game. I still think the Jets offense is working out some kinks. I mean, the Tennessee defense is pretty solid, but that Tennessee game was close. Outside of the Jets defense forcing some turnovers, I'm not sure, if they actually end up winning that game. That being said, I'm going with the Patriots. I feel like this is going to be, such a gritty game.
Wow.
If the Patriots can keep that run game up, where they're averaging I think they had 185 against Seattle or something, and they had I think over 200 the week before that. If they can keep that up, Jacoby Brissett doesn't need to do a whole lot, but he just needs to do enough to where the Jets may just bite themselves in the foot. I'm just not confident in that offense clicking yet, especially with Nathaniel Hackett calling plays. Up next, we have the Giants at the Browns.
I think the Cleveland Browns are going to win this game. Their defense looked very good against Trevor Lawrence, and I think Daniel Jones is just a downgrade of Trevor Lawrence. The Giants have no rushing attack. Malik Neighbors is their only weapon, really. Um, yeah, that being said, Deshaun Watson, still terrible, but he had a rushing touchdown last week, so I'll give him that. I think the Browns are winning this game easily. Giants might go defeated this year.
I agree. I'm going with the Cleveland Browns. I mean, the Giants are just, that offense just isn't good. I mean, you put up, granted their kicker was hurt, but you put up, I think it was 3 touchdowns, and you don't win a game against a team that didn't score a touchdown.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's a tough pill to swallow. The Browns defense is really good. Like, I'm so confident in that Browns defense. I think I'm going to put in my parlay this week. I'm not sure what my whole parlay is going to be, but I'm pretty confident I'm going to add Daniel Jones over 0.5 fumbles. I'm that confident in at least one Daniel Jones turnover, especially if he gets sacked a lot. And that defense was just destroying Cleveland or destroying Jacksonville. So I'm taking the Browns. Like I said, I just don't think there's a question. Packers at Titans.
Okay. I'm going with the Packers. We saw the Malik Willis formula last week against the Colts. Just run the ball. It worked. Will it work again this week? That we'll see. Like you said, this Titans defense I think is kind of underrated, but I think the Packers win this game on the defensive side of the ball. I think the Titans do not have a great run game between Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. I think they can stuff that run game. Calvin Ridley's their only main threat. Um, but I think with the defensive scheme for the Packers, they can easily win this game. They have 5 turnovers through the first 2 weeks, which is number 1 in the NFL right now. So I think the turnovers will help them win this game. Will Levis has made some pretty dumb turnovers in the last couple weeks. I think the Packers will capitalize off these turnovers and take this game against Tennessee.
I'm going with the Packers as well. Yeah, I think this game's going to come down to Josh Jacobs rushing the ball and Will Levis mistakes. That's what this game's going to come down to. I honestly don't think Malik Willis goes over 150 passing yards this game. I mean, he had what? He had 120. How many did he have last week? I'm not exactly sure. I know it was less than
Uh,
150.
it was under 150. I believe he was around 120, 130,
That's
so somewhere in there.
Yeah. I mean, I think he maybe eclipses that, especially against a better defense in the Titans. Like the Colts' pass defense isn't the greatest, so I feel like he throws for less than that. So this is going to be a Josh Jacobs and possibly Jaden Reed, running carry, and it's just going to come down to, like I said, how many mistakes Will Levis makes essentially. So I'm taking the Packers. Chicago Bears at the Colts.
This game comes down to the QB matchup for me. I think this game really could go either way. I think the Bears are more well-rounded. They had the better chance to win this game. Um, it depends on Caleb Williams, man. If he can figure something out, they have a real chance. But I'm going with the Colts strictly because it's home field advantage. Caleb Williams has not looked good, still 0 touchdowns. But we need to see the Anthony Richardson that doesn't throw 3 interceptions this week. He looked very bad last week. They got nothing going through the air against the Packers. You know, this game, I hope they rely on Jonathan Taylor some. I mean, he was pretty dominant last week, I will say. They just didn't utilize him enough, I think. If they give him more touches this week, I think they'll be in good shape. I also want to see Anthony Richardson use his legs more this week. He was not that mobile last week. Um, but yeah, I'm taking the Colts here. I think the Bears' defense is what's keeping them in this game, but I don't think it's going to be enough.
I'm taking the Bears. It's just because this whole game is just going to come down to which version of Anthony Richardson plays this week. If it's the, even though they lost against Houston week 1, if it's that version of Anthony Richardson, they probably win, most likely. But if it's the Anthony Richardson we saw last week, the Bears are 100% going to win this game, even if Caleb Williams plays bad, which he has been playing bad. And the Colts just don't have the greatest defense. So, maybe DeAndre Swift gets going as well, or, they need to get DJ Moore involved, I feel like, in some wide receiver, like just quick wide receiver screens, because he's big enough, but he's fast enough to where he can catch one of these little screens and just break one. And the Colts are just, they're just very easy to falling into being able to give up big plays as well. So in the end, I think it just comes down to which version of Anthony Richardson they're going to get, the Colts, this week, but I'm taking the Bears. Next is Houston, the Houston Texans at the Vikings.
All right, all right. This is an interesting one here. The Vikings, they kind of showed up last week against the 49ers.
They did.
And the Texans, they looked good. Their defense looked good. I'll give them that. I think Stroud wasn't as impressive as I would have liked him to be against the Bears. The Bears stayed in that game, and they were getting nothing done on offense. And for that reason, I'm taking the Vikings here. I think Justin Jefferson and Sam Darnold got something cooking there in Minnesota. This is a home game for Minnesota, which also helps. Their field is pretty hard to play at home. They got a great fan base there. And I think, the Texans will figure it out after this week. I think they just need a loss, and they'll regroup after this week, and they'll have smooth sailing the rest of the way. But I think this is a little hiccup that they need to set up the rest of their season. I'm taking the Vikings.
I'm taking the Texans. I mean, if the Texans' defensive line plays like they did last week against the Bears, Sam Darnold is going to be in for a rough game. Granted, their offensive line is probably a little better than Chicago's, but I feel like this game is going to be what we potentially thought the Bears and Texans game is going to be. It's just going to be complete. It's just going to be an air attack from both teams. Stroud to Nico Collins, Sam Darnold to Justin Jefferson. But I feel like, knock on wood, CJ Stroud has yet to throw an interception this year. And I feel like Sam Darnold is just going to, have that one questionable throw, and it's going to end up being the difference in this game. So I'm going to go with the Texans. Eagles at the Saints.
Man, I'm riding the New Orleans Saints hype train here. The Eagles, well, not really the Eagles. I think Jalen Hurts has not looked great this year. He looks more mobile, but he just, I don't know, something about the way he plays. That last interception on that last drive was just bad. It was just a bad throw. There's not really an excuse for that. He missed a wide open Devontae Smith touchdown as well. Devontae Smith had an easy touchdown. Jalen Hurts threw it two inside to him and just missed an easy touchdown. But I like the Saints here. I think the New Orleans Saints, I don't know what they're on, man, but they're cooking down there in New Orleans right now. And I believe, is this a Saints home game?
Yes.
I believe it is. So that also helps them there. I think they'll be able to get the run game going. The defensive line for Philly last week, or I guess it was yesterday, it did not look great. I believe they only had one sack, maybe two. It did not look great
that
overall.
last drive, it looked really bad. They didn't get any pressure on Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, no. So for that reason, I'm taking the Saints. I think they're going to have a lot of leverage in both the run game and the pass game. And yeah.
I'm taking the Saints as well. The Saints are just riding a huge wave of momentum. They have back-to-back 40-point games, essentially. I think it was 40 and 44, respectively. And I mean, the Eagles just it's just the defense. I feel like the offense is capable, even without AJ Brown, of putting up points. It's just the defense being able to stop other teams. And this Eagles defense is prone to giving up big plays, which is not going to be good against Rashid Shaheed, especially if Derek Carr is on point. I feel like Rashid Shaheed is going to have a monster game against Philly. And, Alvin Kamara is probably going to go off. He's probably going to somehow get like 22 check down passes. But yeah, I think the Saints are just a better team overall as of right now. And I'm going to go with the Saints. This might be the toughest one. The Chargers at the Steelers.
Jeez, I'm so split on this one. I'm not gonna lie. I think it comes down to home field advantage. Honestly, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are gonna win this one at home against the Chargers. The Chargers really haven't been tested that much. I mean, they played the Panthers, which was a pretty easy game for them. They played the Raiders, even though the Raiders beat the Ravens last week. I still don't think the Raiders are that great of a team, and that's a division matchup, so it's everything's a little weird. But I think the Steelers' defense is going to be dominant. TJ Watt's going to have a big game. The Chargers are very run heavy, and I think if the Steelers can stop this run, which I think they will be able to, I think they're going to win this game against the Chargers.
I was on the fence on this one as well, but I'm also going to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, Joe Alt, give him credit, has looked good. He looked good against Max Crosby. He looked good against the Panthers, but I think TJ Watt is going to give him his welcome to the NFL moments, or just welcome to the NFL game. Obviously, I don't think this game is relatively close if the Steelers can contain that Chargers running game, make Justin Herbert throw the ball. Josh Palmer's questionable. Lab McConkey hasn't looked the greatest. He's going through his rookie struggles. And then they have Quentin Johnson, who caught 2 touchdown passes. But Quentin Johnson is your wide receiver one, essentially, if Josh Palmer can't play. And I don't think that's going to be enough against the Steelers defense, especially if they contain the run and are able to put pressure on Justin Herbert. So I'm going to go with the Steelers on this one. Justin Fields in this game, like he's done the past 2 games, he just needs to do enough to get the offense down to either kick field goals or, score a touchdown, or just do enough in a sense of not turning the ball over. And I think he'll do that, being that he's not in Chicago anymore.
There's some speculation that Wilson might play this game. Tomlin didn't answer who was starting when asked in a press conference, so that'll be interesting to see if they still ride with Justin Fields here, or if they turn to Wilson here coming off that injury. We'll see.
That's tough. As much as I like Russell Wilson, I feel like you have to, at least for now, have to keep Justin Fields in. Right? He's not lighting the world on fire with passing or even rushing, but he's more mobile than Wilson. Wilson's a little older as well. He gives that running game an extra option as well. He's been having some good ball placements. He hasn't turned the ball over. So I don't know. I feel like you just got to keep Justin Fields in, at least for now, until maybe they lose or maybe just has a bad game. I'm not really sure though. Up next, we have the Broncos at the Buccaneers.
I think this has to be the Bucks here. The Bucks just beat the Lions, who have been considered a Super Bowl contender. The Bucks have looked good. Their offense has been clicking. I think this is just going to be a blowout. Honestly, I'm taking the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I'm taking the Bucks as well. I mean, the Bucks defense is always good against the run, right? The Broncos running game isn't that good. It got stifled by Pittsburgh last game, and Bo Nix is going to have to throw the ball. I think he's going to have a couple turnovers as well, but this is going to rely on Bo Nix's arm this game. But I just think the the Buccaneers. That defense may be a little too much, and then the offense is going to do essentially enough, or not enough, but they're going to run away with this game, just through the passing game essentially. Panthers at the Raiders.
Man, I can't tell you how badly I want to take the Panthers here. Uh, this just feels like an Andy Dalton game to like just show up out of nowhere and just win this, but I'm
Andy
taking the
Dalton
Raiders.
is Andy Dalton is undefeated against the Raiders in his
That's what
career.
I'm saying, man. That's what I'm saying. This just feels like an Andy Dalton game, but I can't take the Panthers. I can't bet on that offense or defense. It's terrible. I'm going with the Las Vegas Raiders. Let's have Minshew and Devontae Adams cook this Panthers defense. It's not going to be close. Taking the Raiders.
I'm taking the Raiders as well. Yeah, that's all I can say. Max Crosby versus probably the worst offensive line in football is just going to be a field day. And yeah, it's just going to be rough. I think the Panthers maybe put up more points than they do if Bryce Young was a QB, but I mean, this game is just, it's not going to be as close as everyone thinks, so I'm taking the Raiders. Dolphins at the Seahawks.
I think this is some good momentum for the Seahawks. They're going to win this game. They have home field advantage. Tua's out. This is a Seahawks game to win. I'm not sure what their running back situation is looking like, if Kenneth Walker is going to play or not. I don't really think it matters. The pass game looked good last week.
It's
Taking
gonna
the Seahawks.
it's gonna be a Charbonnet at running back. I'm pretty sure. I think Kenneth Walker is still gonna be out.
Even with Charbonnet, I think this is a Seahawks win. Yeah, it's not going to be close. Another blowout here.
Yeah, I agree. I'm taking the Seahawks as well. Yeah, I mean, it's a rookie quarterback against Seattle. As long as they're able to contain the big plays from Devon Achane, whether it's a pass or a run, this is just gonna be it's gonna be all Seattle this game. Especially their secondary is pretty solid as well. So backup quarterback, unfortunately, it's just not gonna work out against Seattle and Mike McDonald. Ravens at the Cowboys.
This is an interesting one. The Ravens are in a weird spot here. They're 0-2. On ESPN, 67% of people are still picking the Ravens, though.
I see that.
I think this game is a home game for the Cowboys, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken. This would be a good bounce back game for the Cowboys, and I do think they bounce back. I'm taking the Cowboys. I just think Baltimore, they're struggling here. The Zay Flowers, Lamar Jackson connection is about all they got going. The Derrick Henry experiment hasn't looked too great so far. He's not getting the production that I think they want. Um, they said they're not going to give him that many carries. I think they have to up the carries though. If I'm Baltimore, you gotta up Derrick Henry's carries. Try to get him the ball in his hands more. I don't think they're going to be able to expose this Cowboys secondary with just Zay Flowers. Maybe get Mark Andrews back in the passing game, maybe. I don't know. He's been pretty silent the first 2 weeks. But I think the Cowboys are just going to win on the defensive side of the ball here.
I agree. I'm taking the Cowboys as well. I think Lamar was the first MVP to go 0-2 since 2002, like to start the season. I think that goes to 0-3. Yeah, I wouldn't. I think they need to give Derrick Henry more touches. I think he needs at minimum 20 touches a game, unless he's dealing with some sort of lingering injury. I don't think he's getting nowhere near 20 carries a game. And I think the Cowboys, after that ugly loss to New Orleans, I think they bounce back. I think Dak bounces back as well. We'll have to see how that running game goes, but I think they're getting Jake Ferguson back as well. If I'm not, I think they're getting him back. Is not determined yet, but even if they didn't, I think it was Luke Shoemaker. He did good, as a tight end as well. So I feel like the Cowboys' offense is fine. It's just the Ravens defense. The Ravens are putting up decent points. It's just that defense can't close out games, and that's what it's going to come down to. Niners at the Rams.
I'm taking the San Francisco 49ers. I think the 49ers are outmatching the Rams in every, like, how am I want to say this? Every position, I think the 49ers are better. Um, Even coming off that loss in Minnesota, I don't think it matters. I think the 49ers are the better team. The Cup and Puka injuries, I mean, those are just rough for the Rams. I don't think they're able to recover from that, honestly. It's at SoFi, but it's still going to be a San Francisco home game. Um, I'm taking the 49ers.
Yeah, I agree. I'm taking the 49ers as well. I mean, every game at SoFi is a home game for the away team anyway. But yeah, the offense with, essentially your third wide receiver as your primary guy is just, it's not going to cut it. Injuries unfortunately happen, but Demarcus Robinson is unfortunately not going to, be able to carry the whole Rams receiving core, especially against the 49ers, a team like that who their secondary is pretty good. So I think the 49ers win this game cut and clear. It's no questions. Lions at the Cardinals.
Okay, this is an interesting one. I'm going to take the Arizona Cardinals. They're playing at home. Their offense was explosive last week. That Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison connection is dangerous. They finally figured it out last week. Um, James Conner is also getting it done on the ground. I love this Arizona Cardinals defense, or not defense. I do not love their defense. I love their offense. Their defense is the question mark in this game for me. But what gives me confidence in the Cardinals here is that Jared Goff has not looked too great between the first two games. Their offense has looked stagnant in Detroit. They got to figure something out here. They got to get their weapons involved in the pass game. Um, but I don't think this is the week for the Lions going up against the Cardinals, who I think are going to surprise the Lions here in week 3.
I am taking the Lions. I think they bounce back after that loss to the Bucks. The Lions have one of the better run defenses in the National Football League right now. I think they contain James Conner a little bit. So it's going to be Kyler Murray and his arm and, his scrambling abilities. But I think this game is just going to be a high-scoring game overall. I think the defense for the Lions, especially that defensive front, is going to create a little trouble for Kyler, even though he can scramble. And I feel like the defense for the Lions is just a tiny bit better. I think Jared Goff gets back to how he was last year, even if it's, not like 400 yards and 8 scores. But I'm taking the Lions on this. I think they bounce back. They need to bounce back, especially after that tough loss to the Buccaneers, and I think they're going to do it. Up next is Sunday Night Football, the Chiefs at the Falcons.
Let's be real here. I don't think the Falcons stand a chance. I'm taking Kansas City every day of the week. Mahomes is going to get a little Mahomey in Atlanta this week. Yeah, no. I think the run game for the Falcons needs to be better. Their pass game was stagnant until that last drive. I think the Chiefs defense is going to win this game. Yeah, I think Mahomes has a bounce back week though. I think, like you said, they're going to get Xavier Worthy involved. The running game won't matter too much this week, I don't think. I think they'll be able to beat them through the air, and I'm taking the Chiefs.
I'm taking the Chiefs as well. Chris Collinsworth is going to have a field day in the broadcast booth. Yeah, no, I don't really think this is too big of a conversation, even without Pacheco. I think the Chiefs just are going to not easily take care of the Falcons, but they're going to take care of business. and beat the Falcons. I don't think Kirk Cousins, outside of that last drive, is looking how he is going to look, by the end of the season. So I think he's a little, shaky off that Achilles tear. So, and I don't think that bounce back happens against the Chiefs, who have a pretty good defense. The Chiefs moved to 3-0. Maybe there's a questionable penalty call that goes for the Chiefs as well, but I don't think it'll matter because it'll be like 26-14 or something at that point in the game. One of the two Monday Night Football games, we have the Jaguars at the Bills.
At the Bills, I think that says it all. Bills are winning this one. Home field advantage for the Bills. Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars have not won a game since last Thanksgiving, I believe I saw a stat. So, I mean, they have looked awful these last few weeks. They got shut out by the Cleveland Browns, and I'm not buying in on Trevor Lawrence until I can see something out of him. I mean, he has not been impressive in my opinion. Uh, their pass game was very dependent on big plays last week. If you watched the game, all their yards in the air came through long passes to Brian Thomas, and there's only one or two of those, and that's not sustainable. I like the Bills here. They looked good in Miami last week. I'm taking the Bills.
I'm taking the Bills as well. I think ETN has a little bit of a bounce back game, but I don't think the Jaguars as a whole are going to be enough to take down the Bills, especially the Bills defense is looking pretty solid as well. And, if it kind of resembles that Miami game where the Bills defense is a lot of the work, Josh Allen, it's not going to need to do that much, hand the ball off, throw, maybe 15 completions, and the Bills are going to easily win this game. And then the last game of week 3 is the Commanders at the Bengals.
This is a must win for the Bengals in my eyes. I think they need this momentum to carry them through the rest of the season. Starting 0-2 is not an easy spot to start. Only 19 of the last 21 teams to start 0-2 have made the playoffs over the last 2 seasons. That's a tough wall to climb. I think this is where it starts for the Bengals, though. This Commanders team is not great. 0 touchdowns against the Giants, which is so hard to do in the NFL. Like, how do you not score a touchdown against the New York Giants?
They won, though.
Um, yeah, I guess their kicker's the GOAT. Whatever. Joe Burrow bounced back. Jamar Chase bounced back. I'm not sure what the T. Higgins timeline is looking like. I don't think it matters, though. I'm liking the Cincinnati Bengals here.
I'm taking the Bengals as well. Yeah, I think that Bengals defense is better than their 0-2 record. I think their offense is better than their 0-2 record as well. And this is going to be a much needed win for them. I mean, you can argue if they should have won last week or not, but I think this, against a weaker Commanders team, they're going to easily win this game without a doubt. And, Jane Daniels, maybe a little trouble on the ground for them, but through the air, I don't think it's going to be a problem for Cincinnati. And Cincinnati is just going to easily win this game. Those are all the predictions for week 3. Moving on to our auto lock of the week. Unfortunately for ESPN, Eliminator Challenge, we're both out. The Eagles lost last week, and that was my pick, so we are no longer contestants in that game. But my auto lock for this week, I'm going with the Bills over the Jaguars. I just think in Buffalo, the Bills are going to be just too much for them to handle. The Jaguars haven't looked good. Like I said before, I think ETN has a bit of a bounce back game, but it's not going to be enough to handle the Bills, and the Bills are going to win this pretty easily.
Okay, that sounds good. My auto lock for this week are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers against the Denver Broncos. I just don't think the Broncos offense or defense have a chance in this game. It's gonna be a blowout. Give me the Bucks as my auto lock.
Solid, yeah. The Bucks are going to be good, or they're probably going to easily win that, especially it's in Tampa as well. So it's going to be a tough one for Bo Nix. Moving on to fantasy. Unfortunately, I am 0-2. I lost last week by a literal point. Yes, one singular point, even down to the decimal place. I needed one more reception. Fortunately, Caleb Williams didn't know how to throw a football for the last 8 minutes of that game, and that's why I lost.
Yeah, that's tough. I went 3-0 across my 3 leagues last week, which was good for me. In the league we're in, I'm looking good. I'm hoping to make some waiver wires this week though. So I hope you don't steal these, but they're probably gonna get stolen anyways.
Where am
I'm
I
trying
in
to
the
pick up.
waiver?
I think you're pretty up there, I think, too.
First again, because I
All right, you make
suck.
any moves this week?
Waiver wire, I might. I'm still on the fence about one, but I
I saw
did.
your trade though.
I did make a trade. Yes. So the original trade proposed was he wanted James Conner for. I was gonna give him James Conner. He was gonna give me Raheem Mostert and Rashid Shaheed. I said no. I'll give you Rashad White. I'll throw in McLaurin in there anyway because I just don't have confidence after 2 games in Jane Daniels throwing the ball downfield. McLaurin had, I think it was 5 catches for, he had 6 receptions for only 22 yards last week.
Yeah,
And the week
that's
before
not
that, he
great.
had 2 receptions for 4 yards. So I figured I'd tack him on there. So I'm trading away Rashard White, who is questionable with that groin injury. I think he still plays. And McLaurin. I'm getting Raheem Mostert and Rashid Shaheed. I just need to hope that James Conner and ETN do not get injured for a long period of time this season, because then my other 2 running backs are going to be Tajay Spears, who's questionable with an ankle injury, and Raheem Mostert, who's may get put on IR with a chest injury. So there's question about that, but I'm getting a deep threat in Rashid Shaheed. I feel like he's going to do very good against the Eagles, and especially if the Saints keep playing the way they are. He's their wide receiver 2 essentially. I feel like he's going to do good this season.
Yeah, I like that trade for you. I think Rashid Shaheed is a good pickup. Terry McLaurin is such a question mark this season. Rashad White, I think that injury's gonna linger a little bit for him there, so I wouldn't I don't hate trading him away there. Um I I'm feeling pretty solid about my roster. There's a few moves I want to make. The first move is I'm trying to get Baker. He's the number 1 ranked QB through 2 weeks. I have Brock Purdy and Justin Herbert. I'm planning on dropping Herbert if I do get Purdy, or if I do get Mayfield. I just need some more substantial, someone I can rely on at that quarterback position, because Brock Purdy and Herbert are averaging a little over 10 points per game between both of them, which is not great. I'm also trying to get a pickup for some more tight end depth. I'm trying to add Hunter Henry from the Patriots, and I'm dropping
Ooh.
Alan Lazard, which I'm not too worried about. If I don't get it, it's not a big deal. I got McBride. I'm chilling. But I'm hoping just to pick him up, hopefully, so I can have some more depth there if anything happens. He looked good in that game against the Seahawks, so that would be a great pickup for me if I can get that.
Yeah, Hunter Henry's the leading receiver for the Patriots. Derek Carr is the number 2 quarterback so far this season. I'm sticking with Goff, though. I don't think I'll play him that much once Jordan Love returns, but I feel like he'll bounce back. I'm on the fence, and it really all depends on this, if Jake Ferguson plays or not. I still may pick him up anyway and drop Josh Palmer, but I'm thinking of picking up Luke. Where is this man? Luke Shoemaker. I don't know where he went on the tight end list. He had 10 points last week, but this obviously, he's not going to get any points or anything if Ferguson plays. So it's just going to matter if Ferguson plays or not. Otherwise, I don't think I'm going to make any waiver wire moves. I was thinking maybe I pick up Carson's Steele and try to use it as like a trade piece for someone. Because I do want to. I almost threw in for that trade as well, seeing if I could get Kyle Pitts with that trade, but I figured that would be too much. So I may have to dive deep in a sense and see if I can get a tight end from someone. I don't know who I would trade a tight end for though. That's the only thing.
There's some decent tight ends available on waivers, I feel like, right now. I mean, you got Hunter Henry, like I said.
Yeah.
We also have Zach Ertz, who is somehow ranked 7th. I wouldn't buy in on Zach Ertz if I were you, but he's an
Yeah.
option. And then also kind of an underrated one, I think, is Mike Gesicki. He's ranked 6th through 2 weeks.
Yeah, I was looking at Gesicki as well.
The only thing that worries me about Gesicki
He's
is the
tight
return
end
to T. Higgins. So
and I still don't know if Gesicki is tight end 1 or tight end 2 because they also have Drew Sample, who they use. And just
yeah,
looking at it, it seems like Drew Sample is tight end 1, but Gesicki gets more. He gets more of the receptions and stuff.
yeah. Drew Sample's averaging 2.9 points through 2 weeks. So we'll see how that plays out. There's actually another tight end who is actually above Drew Sample in average points per week. So I don't know how much of a factor Drew Sample is in the past game in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I still have Likely on the bench. He's still tight end 1. I didn't play him last week. This week against Dallas, it might be solid. He only had 4 points last week, but then again, Dalton Schultz only had 4 points last week as well. So, I got decisions to make. I have decisions to make, but like I said, it's just going to come down. I feel like my main thing is just going to come down to if Jake Ferguson plays or not, because then I'll 100% probably pick up Luke Shoemaker, and I know he's going to do decent in that Cowboys offense, being probably the number 2 target until Ferguson gets back.
Yeah.
Although I thought I saw last week, I thought I was projected to win next week. I don't remember. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, the win probability right now for me is 58%. So, let's hope that actually stays. Yours is 63%.
Yeah, my opponent has Pacheco in his lineup still. So it depends if he's active and moves him out. I'm assuming he's going to switch him out. I'm not sure. Let's look at the bench here. Doesn't look like he has many great options. He's got Trey Benson is his only backup running back. So that's interesting. I have a pretty favorable matchup this week. I think I like my odds of winning. I think I have the better player at almost every position except quarterback, maybe. Kyler's probably a better quarterback than Brock Purdy. So we'll see how that pans out this week.
I like my odds this week as well. I mean, the person I'm facing is Fields at quarterback. Mixon, RB1, who's questionable with an ankle injury. Swift, Drake London, Xavier Worthy, Okonkwo at tight end, Pickens and flex. Unless he changes out the Jags defense or drops them or drops the Commanders defense, he's got the Jags defense in right now. Ferguson at tight end is questionable, and Debo is out for him as well. And his other wide receivers are not good. He's got Xavier Legette, Lad McConkey, and Curtis Samuel. So I'm feeling pretty confident. Moving on to our fun question. I'm going to start first. You kind of saw my tweet already, so from the other day, but J.J. McCarthy has the same amount of touchdown passes as Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Bo Nix through 2 games. It's 0 touchdown passes. So my question is, which rookie quarterback do you think gets their first passing touchdown, and in what week?
Oh. So we got Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, and Caleb Williams. I'm
Yeah,
looking at, let's see. I think, hmm, it's a tough one. I think I'm gonna go with Caleb Williams, and I think it's gonna be this week. I think it's a pretty favorable matchable. What am I saying? I think it's a pretty favorable matchup for Caleb Williams. The Colts secondary isn't too great. Their run defense isn't great, and I think that'll set up a lot of opportunities for the Bears in the pass game. Um, I think maybe we see a screen for Caleb Williams' first touchdown pass. Keenan Allen might be back this week, which would also help them out. I'm not sure what his timeline looks like, but I think he's trending up. So if they get all three weapons back, I think they're looking decent. And I think it's Caleb Williams' time to shine and get his first touchdown. What about you?
I was thinking about this, you know, this week, or I was looking at the matchups this week. I don't think Jaden Daniels gets one against the Commander or against the Bengals. The, the Bears, they're playing the Colts. I maybe, but I'm I, I'm gonna say it's Bo Nix, and I feel like he gets it done this week against the Buccaneers. I feel like that run defense or the run game is just going to be close to non-existent for the Bucks or for the Broncos this game against the Bucks, who have a pretty good run defense, and I feel like that's going to make Bo Nix have to throw the football the majority of this game, and they'll probably throw an interception or two or three, but I feel like he's going to break through and get that first touchdown pass. I feel like it's going to be Bo Nix. If it's not this week, it'll be next week for Bo Nix, but it's going to be Bo Nix, and I'm saying it's against the Bucks this week.
All right, solid. So, my question for you is who do you think the MVP is through week 2? Very early MVP vote. Who is it going to?
Ooh, that's tough. That is tough. Let me look at stats real quick. Um,
I mean, we have Baker who's cooking, we have Derek Carr who's cooking. It's a very weird MVP race. I
I
think it's one
agree.
that it doesn't include Lamar Jackson, doesn't include Josh Allen, doesn't include Jordan Love, our picks, doesn't include Patrick Mahomes. I mean, it's weird, man. It's weird.
I don't think this is the person, but I'm gonna give a honorable mention to J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins, he's first in
Okay.
rushing. He's tied for second with 2 touchdowns. He's averaging 9.9 yards a carry. That doesn't seem right, but I think it is right on
Yeah, I
27
believe.
attempts.
Yeah.
I think I got to go Derek Carr, though. I mean, you could say it's Carolina Panthers, but I don't think anyone was expecting what he did against the Cowboys to be anything remotely close to that. And the way he has his offense cooking right now, they're averaging over 40 points a game. They may score 40 points a game against the Eagles this week as well. I think Derek Carr is probably the front runner right now for MVP. We'll see if he's able to keep that pace up, obviously, but I think I got to go Derek Carr.
Yeah, this is such a weird MVP conversation. I'm not gonna give Derek Carr because you went Derek Carr, but I'm gonna go with Kyler Murray just because I love the way this Cardinals offense has been playing. It's so much fun to watch. Kyler is back. It's so much fun. I just hope COD coming out this season doesn't completely ruin him. I believe it comes out week 8. So if we see a drop off, you know what happens. But I love this connection they got going in Arizona between him and Marvin. He had a crazy stat line last week. I believe he only had 4 incompletions with like 3 touchdowns or something. It's just absurd. He's looked great. Um, yeah, I'm going with Kyler Murray so far.
Yeah, I mean, throwing it back to J.K. Dobbins, he is 21st in carries. So in first is Josh Jacobs and Jordan Mason. They have 48 attempts. J.K. Dobbins has 27 attempts and leads the league in rushing. And he's also
Yeah, that's
averaging
crazy.
9.9 yards a carry, which is ridiculous. So I feel like he can sneakily be in that conversation, maybe,
I feel like
or offensive
he
player of
might
the
be the
year.
favorite. He might be the favorite for comeback player of the year because
That's
remember
true.
he did have that injury
That's true.
last
And
season and
Aaron
he was out.
Rodgers is not looking too
Yep.
good.
Aaron Rodgers has only looked mid, so he might, in my opinion, he's the front runner for comeback player of the year right now. The way he's playing, I mean, he looks explosive in that Chargers offense, and
Hmm.
this offense favors him so much. I believe I saw this picture of Chargers offensive line last week, and they had like so many extra offensive linemen out there.
Oh yeah,
I'm trying to find a picture,
they are
but
just the offensive line is
they are
that
run
run
heavy
that
and
run
it's working.
offensive line is really good.
Yeah, it's looking good.
Unfortunately, I've got no parlay for you guys this week because I gotta think of one. I missed out on my last one by one extra point. Thank you, San Francisco, for only scoring 2 touchdowns. But I'm waiting. What I'm thinking I'm leaning towards is this free CD pick. I think Malik Willis was under 149 and a half passing, so I was gonna do that. Daniel Jones over zero point 0.5 fumbles, and then one other, I don't remember what it was. I think it was Derek Carr over 260 passing, maybe. But I'm gonna wait till later in the week to figure that out. So I'll probably post it on my Twitter if you guys do want to follow that. But that is gonna conclude episode 3 of Midweek Meetings. Covered a lot of headlines, a lot of the injury bug hitting early. Hopefully, it doesn't hit as big or as long into the week. But this is going to be, we're starting to get into that part of the season, week 3 through probably 7, where we're going to see who's contenders and who's pretenders and who's looking forward to next season.
Yep, I don't have much. This will be an interesting week. A lot of good matchups. I'm betting on a lot of, well, not betting. I'm not doing that. But I think I'm predicting a lot of upsets. I think it'll be an interesting week in the NFL, and I think the playoff picture, although it's only week 3, we'll start to see who those top dogs are and really see what the playoff picture might look like. So yeah.
I agree. Yeah, if you bet, make sure you bet responsibly. Thank you guys for tuning in to Midweek Meetings episode 3. Make sure you guys subscribe to us on YouTube at Midweek Meetings on YouTube, and feel free to go follow us both on Twitch and Twitter. If you're watching this on YouTube, the link will be in the description for those. And if you're watching it live, we will be live again on both our channels, twitch.tv/KnockdownNico and twitch.tv/Pr3ssix next Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, to talk about week 3. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.